We all know that the worst part about being outside is the constant honking and squawking from the hordes of geese that roam our streets. Our politicians have failed us. We've told them that geese are ruining our cities and towns. We've begged them to clean up our streets and rid us from these terrible ornery pests, and they have refused. That's why we must take things into our own hands. Luckily, the fine folks over at Goose Cycle have done just that. Goose Cycle does the dirty work by capturing, dispatching, and butchering those horrible winged beasts. Not only do they get rid of these cranky feathered threats, but they put their meat to good use. That's right, each goose which is slaughtered by Goose Cycle is boiled and turned into delicious hearty soup, which is then given back to the local communities from which the goose was removed. I'm talking soup kitchens, I'm talking school lunch programs, I'm talking food pantries, I'm talking about the soup they serve at Subway restaurants. Subway is proud to partner with Goose Cycle to help eliminate the scourge of violent geese that attack our fellow citizens while also using their flesh to create succulent soups that you can purchase as part of our new Goose Cycle meal deal. This episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires is brought to you by Subway's new Goose Cycle meal deal. This affordable meal consists of your choice of any 6-inch sandwich, a medium soft drink, and a bowl of creamy goose soup. Offer only valid at participating locations. Goose meat not FDA certified or even inspected. These geese were destroying our cities and we had to take care of them quickly. We couldn't wait for the slow machinations of government for approval, so Goose Cycle isn't exactly legal, but like I said, they boil the meat and that has to kill all the goose viruses, so please head on into Subway and get a Goose Cycle meal deal today.
You have successfully connected to the Secret Society of Fly Tires podcast.
As soon as I finished the last episode about the American River, I felt bad. I felt like I talked shit behind my friend's back and got caught. Like I said something shitty about a coworker on an email that eventually got forwarded to them. There is a lesson here. First, don't put any shit talking in writing unless you are absolutely okay with it coming back to the person you're talking bad about. Probably an even better idea not to write, record, and release a podcast talking shit either. Now, I wasn't exactly talking about a person, I was talking about a river and the city where that river is found. There are plenty of things I love about the American River and Sacramento, even if I'm not totally in love with either of them in a big picture sense. Here at the critically acclaimed crafting and leisure podcast, Secret Society of Fly Tires, we try to be honest and cool and not to talk shit. By we, I mean me, your host, Mickey.
You think I look like Mickey Mouse? Do I look like Mickey Mouse?
I don't think I've used that name yet, and I like it. Call me Mickey from here on out. So, sorry, American River and Sacramento. You are all right in my book.
And I apologize if I've hurt anybody's feelings there. Waddle doodle.
I could have said more nice things about you instead of being negative. I met my wife here. We had kids here. Those kids have been going to the American River for their whole lives and enjoying it. And I enjoy watching them enjoy it. I own a home here somehow. We got in right before things went totally bonkers, alright? 2 of my brothers live close to my neighborhood too. It's not a horrible place and I want to love it. I just don't think I'll ever get to that point, and that's okay.
You're gonna be okay! Now say it! You're gonna be okay! Say it! You're gonna be okay!
The American River has lots of positives too, even if our state government doesn't seem to care about it and if people abuse the resource by leaving their trash everywhere and poaching fish. For instance, there's the population of freshwater crocodiles that I planted in the American River about 6 years ago that have been slowly establishing themselves in the area. I incubated 11 crocodile eggs in the tent in my garage that I usually grow legal herbs in, and after they spent a few months in my backyard swimming pool, they got strong enough to feed on their own. So I released them in the dead of night near the Watt Avenue Bridge. Now they help keep the goose population in check, and that is a big positive in my book.
and no one is beyond making mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made was with this big crocodile right here.
I also worked long and hard on another science experiment. If you listen to my show, you know I spend way too much of my spare time reading weird stuff on the internet. Too many conspiracies and stories of high strangeness obviously can't be good for anyone. I mean, how awake can one person be? You can only unjack yourself from the Matrix to a certain point before you are fully unjacked. There are a couple terms that I've deemed as current hot topics in the conspiracy realm, and they are giants, which you know I love, and homunculuses. Homunculi? I'm not really sure what the plural for homunculus is, but I had no idea what that word even meant until maybe a year ago. And if you don't know what it is, the definition I'm reading to you today from an unnamed webpage that may or may not be Wikipedia states that during medieval and early modern times, it was thought that a homunculus, an artificial human-like being, could be created through alchemy. The homunculus first appeared by name in alchemical writings attributed to Paracelsus? An outline of his method for creating homunculi, so it was homunculi, goes like this: that the sperm of a man be putrefied by itself in a sealed cucurbit for 40 days with the highest degree of putrefaction in a horse's womb, or venter equinus is what it says, meaning warm fermenting horse dung, or at least so long that it comes to life and moves itself and stirs, which is easily observed. After this time it will look somewhat like a man, but transparent without a body, if, after this, it be fed wisely with the arcanum, what are these words, of human blood, and be nourished for up to 40 weeks, and be kept in the even heat of this horse's womb, a living human child grows therefrom, with all of its members like another child, which is born of a woman, but much smaller. What the hell is that? Someone wrote that out.
What the hell is even that?
In fact, someone didn't just write that out. People have been seriously trying to create these things using that method. You think everything is boring and easily explained by logic and stuff? Think again. And think some more, because if people have continued trying to make a homunculus using this method, something had to have worked at some point, right? Which celebrities own or are themselves homunculi? I would like to know. Back to the definition. The fully grown homunculus was supposedly greatly skilled in art and can create giants, dwarves, and other marvels, as, quote, through art they are born, and therefore art is embodied and inborn in them, and they need learn it from no one.
But then he starts mentioning that he doesn't know what to feed the homunculi, debating back and forth whether or not to feed it milk, blood, or more specimen. I'm not sure why he mentioned blood or even the specimen. I feel like milk would be the way to go, if not, I don't know, like vegetables or something. And then in this next one, we can see that the homunculus has grown only larger. Corny's saying that he settled on feeding it meat, but then notes that the homunculus has grown pretty motionless besides from the time where it needs to feed.
So obviously I had to have one. I decided to go the fish route because that's what I love, okay? Mixing these two worlds. Okay, maybe this isn't really a homunculus by the definition I just read to you, but my goal was to hybridize the Sacramento suckerfish with the American shad. If I could somehow get these suckerfish to sit in the right place in the river and lay some eggs while the extremely horny male shad comes swimming upriver spraying their cum everywhere, I could naturally create a hybrid of two really cool fish.
That is so cool. I love these ones, guys. They're very red, very colorful. That is really cool. There's another. Yes! That is so pretty. Look at the blue, the red, and the yellow.
And if I could get them to thrive, they would help supplant all the other fish that the new local freshwater crocodiles seem to be decimating fairly quickly. I don't have a proper laboratory to make this happen in a controlled environment, so I have to work within their natural habitat. It won't be easy, but the end goal is my own organic hybrid species. This new fish mashup would have the pungent flesh of a suckerfish and the ornery personality of an American shad. A real heavy hitter if you ask me.
Nobody asked you, Mickey.
Man, I just wanted to apologize to my home water real quick to kick off episode 32, but I got going and here we are.
I am going to remind you in advance that I'm very sorry and I apologize.
Freshwater crocodiles that I raised in my own yard and released into the local water system to start their own resident population, and an organic sucker shad hybrid to keep them well fed. I feel like I should apologize to my guest already for tricking her into coming on this show. I just read almost 2 full pages of nonsense, and I haven't even really introduced her yet. My guest for this episode of Secret Society of Fly Tires is the very talented Amanda Chapman. We're online friends now. You might know her as the girl who ties flies on Instagram. That's where I found her, and I kind of knew in the back of my head that she would be my guest one day right from the get-go. We traded messages for a bit before deciding to make the focus of this episode the Skykomish River up in Washington State. I love steelhead and the rivers they swim in, so of course this was immediately right up my alley. Amanda also mostly likes to tie the style of flies I prefer to tie myself, which are flies to swing for steelhead. In fact, she sells small batches of custom flies to anglers like you and I. I will link to her Instagram in the show notes, and you take it from there. She likes fishing those flies with a two-handed rod. We have a whole bunch of stuff in common, see people? She's a volunteer at Warriors and Quiet Waters, and she's just a flat-out fishy lady. I'm stoked she agreed to chat with me. Please excuse this brief word from one of our sponsors.
Arby's does have a beef with beef that doesn't end up on buns with crispy onions and smoked Gouda, or flatbreads with cheddar and crispy bacon.
Baby's hungry. Baby want beef. Where to feed baby? Feed baby mountains of beef at Arby's. Arby's. They have beef there. You can't see it because it's just audio, but I did air quotes when I said beef. When I was a kid, I heard a rumor that the super thin beef that's served at Arby's was actually a liquid. I mean, it was like pancake batter. It's liquid until you cook it, and then it solidifies into those thin beef sheets. Fast forward 60 years to today when an Arby's marketing director contacted me and offered to sponsor an episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires, and I asked them about the liquid beef thing, and guess what? It's true. The rumor's true. The beef really is a pourable liquid, and it cooks up in a few seconds into savory sheets of a meat-like product. Isn't that incredible? Arby's roast beef sandwiches are filled with tons of tiny beef pancakes. I love that. I just wish they tasted good and didn't give me bloody diarrhea. And just to clarify, I don't mean bloody diarrhea like a British person might say it, where bloody doesn't actually mean blood. I really mean blood. If I eat Arby's roast beef sandwiches, I get diarrhea and it is really bloody. It's like I'm dumping a bucket of red paint into the toilet bowl. This episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires is not sponsored by Arby's. When I talked to the marketing director a few hours ago, I told him that we wouldn't accept their offer of $15,000 to sponsor an episode unless they brought back their big Montana sandwich, which was just 2 pieces of soggy bread and a full half pound of those beef pancakes inside. The Arby's guy explained to me that the sandwich is still available and they just renamed it to the half-pound roast beef sandwich, and I said that it's just not the same because the name of a sandwich affects the flavor of it, and he laughed at me, so I told him that I hate his guts and he could keep his check for $15,000, and he did, and now I'm here sponsoring this episode myself because of my pride and spiteful attitude, and you know what? It was worth it.
I have never been to the Skykomish, so I'm stoked to learn about it on this episode. But first, I have some really big news to share.
This just in. Breaking news is breaking out everywhere.
I have stopped smoking cigarettes. It's true. Well, I haven't smoked since Father's Day this year, which is just over a week ago as I typed this episode out. But I do not plan on smoking them again. I complained about quitting for the first 6 or 7 episodes of Season 3, and now I get to complain about not smoking for the rest of the season. Lucky you. It's been quite a run if I do say so myself. I wish I knew how much money I've spent in my life on cigarettes. Or maybe I don't, because I'd probably be so mad about it. That's the weird thing too. I've quit before, and I've always been mad about quitting. It's nothing unusual. The first few days after quitting are rough as you get the cigarette juice out of your body. I've always been irritable in that stretch during the previous times I've tried to quit and was just kind of mad and mean in general.
Where the fuck is a cigarette?
What are you talking about?
I ain't got no goddamn cigarette.
So whose fault is that?
Ah!
How long have you been out?
Couple hours now, Mike. I asked you to bring your goddamn back!
I forgot, I'll go
You didn't forget a goddamn thing!
Can you not wait 10 minutes while I go get it?
No, I got bladder fluid!
This time was different. I was mostly just feeling depressed about it, which sounds weird, I guess. I can actually picture the puzzled look my dad would give me if I told him that. A look he's given me many times in my life, and usually for good reason. It's true though. It's like a friend moved away and I won't see him again. I won't say that it's like a friend dying because I'm not that devastated about it, but I've been upset, okay? I pretty much enjoyed all the years I spent smoking, and to see them in the rear view doesn't feel good yet. It will though. I gotta confess that I didn't quit cold turkey this time, which is the route I've always taken. I already knew I wasn't going to go down the Zyn suckable mouth pouches route that everyone and every internet-connected device I own suggests. but a chance encounter with a listener really helped me out this time. You never know who listens to your show, and it just so happens that one of my listeners works in the research and development department at the Philip Morris Tobacco corporate offices. They reached out to me after listening to my constant complaining about quitting on earlier episodes of Season 3 with a proposal that I couldn't refuse. With the feds cracking down on flavored tobacco products like vapes and those suckable mouth pouches that I just mentioned, Philip Morris has been putting significant time and energy into some potentially revolutionary new cigarette alternatives. So like I said, I was approached by a listener to test one of these new products that has yet to hit the market, and it's actually worked for me. I don't want to give it all the credit for me quitting this time around, but it has absolutely helped. It's a new, nicotine-infused, silicone-based personal lubricant to be used for jacking off or for sexual intercourse. I know it sounds crazy, but what do you expect from Big Tobacco? They literally want all of us dead and will stop at nothing to fill our bodies full of deadly carcinogenic chemicals. They know that humans love to masturbate, and the personal lubricant market is one they had yet to explore, until they met me and understood the vast influence that I have over the fly fishing world.
I don't pay for my own meals. I'm an influencer.
I've proven it works, and will be their spokesperson once it's approved by the FDA or whatever and goes to market. Maybe they'll be the first real sponsor of this show. Stay tuned to find out. Anyways, I told you I was going to quit this season. I just didn't know I would be assisted by a nicotine-infused personal sex lubricant. Life is full of surprises, just like a steelhead river. You might have to work a little bit to find those surprises in a steelhead river, but that makes them even sweeter. Since I already told you I've never been to the Skykomish, or the Sky as locals refer to it, I'm going to find some basic info put together by anglers who have been there so I can relay it to you. I want to be a sky guy, which is the badass local slang term for dudes that fish the Skykomish. AvidAngler.com had this to say about the place. Many anglers cut their teeth fly fishing the Pacific Northwest on the Skykomish. Do they? A popular river for hatchery steelhead, it's only about a 45-minute drive outside of Seattle, allowing lots of time to get outside and practice. The North and South Forks flow out of the Central Cascade Mountains and join to form the main river. The main stem then follows along Highway 2 from Ryder Pond Steelhead Hatchery and down to Gold Bar, Startup, and Sultan before joining the Snoqualmie at Monroe. There is excellent wade access to ascending sea-run fish along this entire stretch, targeting steelhead from the confluence with the Snoqualmie near Monroe to the Highway 2 crossing known as Big Eddy Access / High Bridge above Gold Bar. The Skykomish is generally open from June 1st until January 31st, and from Big Eddy to the confluence of the North and South Forks from June 1st until February 15th. If targeting salmon from the confluence with the Snoqualmie near Monroe to the Highway 2 crossing known as Big Eddy Access or High Bridge above Gold Bar, the Skykomish is generally open from September 1st until December 31st. The forks get a little more complex, but generally if you want to target trout, you can fish the South Fork Skykomish from the first Saturday in June until November 30th, and the North Fork Skykomish below Deer Falls from the first Saturday in June until January 31st. The river has a few distinct sections that keep anglers busy throughout the year. From Sultan downstream to the mouth, the valley stretches out, farmlands predominate, and the river widens and slows down a bit compared to upriver. The riffles and runs are generally shallower, wider, and longer and are perfect for swinging a fly for sea-run fish, especially in higher water. Upstream from Sultan and Gold Bar, the valley tightens up and the river is faster, deeper, and more boulder-strewn. This section produces fish throughout the year, but it really comes into its own for fly anglers when the water is lower. Just above the Highway 2 crossing at Big Eddy or High Bridge boat access, you'll find Ryder rearing ponds, a site of acclamation for hatchery river steelhead and a popular destination for many anglers. The forks of the Skykomish offer intrepid anglers shots at resident trout and the rare high-swimming steelhead. Rugged and difficult to access, these stretches are among the most beautiful in Washington state. The article ends with a few tips. When hatchery steelhead enter the system, they tend to rush up to their point of acclimation without stopping. For many fish on the Skykomish, this acclimation point is the Ryder rearing ponds above Gold Bar. If you're targeting hatchery fish, the holding water near Ryder is a great place to start. In contrast to their hatchery counterparts, wild Skykomish fish take their time heading upstream, stopping and holding water along the entire length of the river. Getting to know a few quality runs over the course of the season will increase your odds of hooking into these prize game fish. Learn to spay cast and learn to do it well. The majority of the river is best covered with the superior efficiency of a long rod, especially the broad, sweeping runs between Gold Bar and Monroe. The Sky even has a fly named after it, the Skykomish Sunrise, which is a cool enough pattern that I dug up a little info on its history. The Skykomish sunrise steelhead fly was originated by Ken and George McLeod. George caught a large Kiss Blocks River steelhead back in 1955 on this fly. At the time, it was the world record rainbow trout caught on a fly. That world record fish began the popularity of the fly, and it has proven successful ever since. How many fly patterns have a world record as part of their history? That is cool. Many die-hard steelhead anglers swear by the fly and rarely use anything else. It's a beautifully colored fly incorporating some of the colors of, you guessed it, the sunrise. Seattle's George McLeod first tied this sunrise-inspired fly as a gift for his brother in 1938. The Skykomish sunrise has set the standard for West Coast steelhead flies. This podcast that I host and has no real say in the matter claims the fly has since been usurped by Jonathan Farmer's graboid leech.
The leech. Leeches are found on every continent except Antarctica.
The leech sucks its prey down like spaghetti.
What are leeches anyway?
This fly is fished on the swing in the traditional manner. It works great in low, clear water, and it's only not recommended in very dingy, high, off-colored water. I believe that everything I just read to you confirms that the Skykomish sunrise fly pattern is going to work on the Skykomish River, at least when fished correctly and with a little confidence. Amanda's got her own fly pattern that doesn't even have a name that will work too. Just ask her and the many people who buy them from her. Naming a fly pattern isn't easy, so I don't blame her for not naming it yet. Kind of like naming a band, I guess. That is my only comparison because I haven't tied up a pattern unique enough that I felt like I should name it. But I hate trying to come up with a band name, and I've done that many times. It's one of the most painful processes associated to being a musician.
We don't ever play any songs that y'all wrote. I ain't heard one of them. I'll just talk.
We don't even play any songs with words at all that I remember. We ain't got no fucking microphone. We ain't got no speaker set up.
We don't got no goddamn band. We don't need to fucking practice, Randy. We don't need a shit-ass manager neither.
I feel like most people besides SSFT alumni and Rio tying team members Britta Fordyce and Patrick Kilby don't get much pleasure from naming flies, and they come up with some good ones. I bet Kelly Gallup also has fun naming his patterns actually, but you get what I'm saying. It's been kind of a theme with my recent guests though. Gilligan from episode 29 has a great streamer that he hasn't named either. I thought briefly about holding some kind of contest where you people listening try to name these flies, but I haven't done that for two reasons. One, it would require some effort and actual engagement, and I feel like this show exists in a world where it's just enjoyed by a small group of people and that's all, and I'm fine with it. And two, I'm afraid of the names that small group of people would submit. So, we'll let sleeping dogs lie there. Or swinging flies lie? Here's me interviewing the one female per season that I end up fooling into coming onto this show.
I feel like I want to drop some philosophy. I've come to realize through a lot of great teachers, presently and in the past, that everything comes down to this consciousness. And you are not you. You are the consciousness. You tell yourself a story about your life, and everybody does. Well, the consciousness is eternal. You go through your life, and the consciousness is always there, always present. And the consciousness, the same consciousness that flows through every human and animal and tree, is really in charge here. We're kind of along for the ride. We can make decisions, but they're pretty superficial. They're not even the important things. Those things are governed by the consciousness. For example, your beating heart and your breath and the pumping of your blood, the digesting of your food, the creation or the building of a creature in the womb. All super intelligent consciousness.
Awesome. I like the way the universe works, and that was a good little, I don't know, tidbit.
Well, that's the way I do things too. I follow those little synchronicities.
I do too. I find more and more that when you pay attention to those things, whether it's in just life or fly fishing or fly tying, and that's why I love this so much, because there's so many arenas that apply to life lessons, but this is a good one.
Man, we're getting deeply philosophical already, and I haven't even gotten any questions in. I like it. But Amanda, very nice to have you on the show. I'm not sure if you've listened to any of my previous episodes yet. I like to ask because I'm always worried that the guest doesn't hear anything before I put it out, and then they're embarrassed to be on the show.
You know what? I have not heard one in full. I've
Okay.
listened to some
All right.
clips, but I've never listened to one in its entirety. But to give you credit, there's probably like 3 podcasts ever that I've listened to in their
Oh, all right.
entirety.
That
So
does make me feel good.
ADHD.
All right. Well, then you get the gist of it. I mean, I try to do these things where I try to put a little bit of info about, we're talking about the Skykomish. That's how I say it, right? I was going back and forth while I've been researching it.
Skykomish. Yep.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
And I try to put some stuff together for like a monologue before I get to the interview and talk about you and the place that we're talking about a little bit. And then we get to the interview and we discuss the fishing stuff. And so I have some questions for you. And
Okay.
we're going to start real basic. So, and this is not at all fly tying or fishing question, but
Okay.
are you or have you ever been a cigarette smoker?
Oh dear. Yeah, I have. Mm-hmm.
Not anymore, though.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
No. No, it was kind of in my youth.
Yeah, well, I couldn't let go of it. I'm currently trying to quit, and I'm not doing that good at it. Or maybe I'm not trying that hard, but I hate smoking now, and I hate quitting the same. So
You know,
I'm looking
it's
for inspiration.
well, here's the thing is I think, I mean, you want to go real philosophical. I think there are some things, no matter what the substance is or what the situation is, that there may be intervention or chemical pharmaceuticals needed help, whatever. But I think for the most part, unless it's a severe issue that it's going to cause you health concerns, the best way with anything is to just get to the point where you don't cut back, you don't talk about it, you don't wishy-wash, you're like, okay, this is it. We're here. I'm doing it.
Hard line. Yeah.
I think it just with anything, it just, you kind of get to that point where I'll say, and I think that point, whether, I hate to use the term rock bottom with anything, but when you get to the point where I'll say the negatives outweigh the positives in any situation, and you really start looking at it, like you said, I'm thinking about it, but I don't like it. I don't like the idea of it.
Well, I've quit a couple of times before for long periods too, like a couple of years and stuff. And it's been the only way I've been able to do it is to do exactly what you're saying, is be just hard line with it.
And
no weaning off of it or anything of that
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
And I will say I was so young and like I quit because like I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I'll say maybe I had a little easy, but I did have a miscarriage, and then you're like, well, why all the things? So that was enough for me to stay with that. But I did go back in between pregnancies. Like you said, you have that period of time, and kids don't listen. Oh, I'm an open book. I'm pretty transparent. Like my kids are aware of a lot of my, I'll say the things that maybe I wish I didn't, but all the things. No, I think it gets to where like and with, like you said a couple of times, 2 steps forward, 1 step back in life with a lot of things. That's where growth is. And I think it's just knowing that you can do things in certain periods or whatever. That's like, you just got to figure that how that works for yourself and take it and run with it for the long haul. And not that everything needs to come down to AA, but like the 1 day at a time thing, or 1 moment at a time, like no matter what it is that you're dealing with, whether you're trying to learn a new craft, whether you're trying to quit something, it's 1 day, 1 moment at a time, having something to fill the void. Like, I think we as humans are huge creatures of habit. And when we stop doing something or we change course, like there's an abruption. And if you can facilitate things so that, whether it's gum chewing, whether it's something, a fidget, whatever it is for you, whether it's oral, whether it's hand, the fixation, that stressor that nicotine or the cigarette does. I know for some people it's like the nicotine addiction, and for other people,
I'm not sure anymore.
it's like that nuance. Like, because for me, like I almost got to a point where like I craved like holding a cigarette. Like I realized like I didn't want to smoke it really, but like there was some association that I had to relief, or like that something that physical sensation of lighting a cigarette, holding it.
Even when you were like alone, or is this just socially?
No, like alone. I'll say mostly alone, like driving in the car, or
you're like Andrew Dice Clay. He just has to have it. have it in his hand up there.
Kind of. I think I get into those definite creature comforts where I'm kind of,
Yeah.
you get expected upon things, you know?
Oh yeah, it's big routine thing for me. Like it's part I've worked it into my routine for so long that, and I'm actually using this season of my show to hold me accountable. Like I'm documenting my progress as I'm trying to quit. So by the end of this, the goal is to celebrate that I have quit.
I like that.
I'm trying to get some other outside accountability out there. Like it's on the internet. I have to live up to it.
You know what? I am absolutely convinced. I mean, talk about like when I mentioned my last name, like all the things crazy, going through some stuff and like I'm going through where like, yeah, there's some checks and balances that I'm being allowed to put into place where I'm like, you know what? I really wanted to go this route anyways. So I can look at this as like, oh man, I have to jump through those hoops. Or like, this is just like you said, it's out there. Like somebody else is holding me is helping me to hold me accountable. So like, because it's so easy to, when we hold ourselves accountable for things, to allow those moments of, it's just this once and no. And as a past power lifter, and I never took the test, but studied for my certification as a personal trainer, like coach, weightlifting coach. Like I would say whether it was, and that's it, either getting strong or losing weight seems to be like humans' number one like thing in life. Like if you can ask someone, have you ever struggled with this in life? Like most people will be like, yeah. And so it's like what you just said, it's the accountability. As soon as you tell someone, if you're trying to change up your eating habits, your mindset, your weightlifting, those patterns, like find someone whose accountability matters to you and is going to be there. And then on top of that, like you said, you've worked it into your schedule. Like you need to change schedule, change habits, work different things in to allow for I'll say for success. Like it really goes like, I'm so ridiculous. I feel like here I am at 46 and I like set my vitamins out at night. Like I set myself up for success in the morning. So I think no matter what it is, I mean, even in my fly tying, like I had to, part of it's, I think my ADHD and learning how to not fight the ADHD, but put systems in place that allow you to work with it. And it's like compartmentalizing things. So getting bins for the flies, like, okay, this fly, I need 4 dozen of this fly. So what are all the components of this fly? Get them in the bin. Do I have them all? Okay, I can complete the order. I don't have to complete it right now because it's not due for 3 months, but I know I have all the components to do it.
Yeah.
For me, my mind, like
it's sounding like those actually work really well together. Like the more that I'm thinking about it and the way you're explaining it.
Well, I don't know. I just kind of, it's just, I think as we have more experience in life, and like I said, there's so many arenas that can be applied to, I'll say life lessons, but powerlifting, like 2 arenas that I've hit hard in life, powerlifting and fly fishing, I just feel have so many parallels to,
that's interesting.
I'll say peace, happiness, joy, and success in life. Like, and those are the things I think that we as humans really, when you really get down to the nitty gritty, it's what we're after.
Yeah.
We're built for.
Yeah. Well, I've never power lifted, so I don't know how I can't make that connection, but I believe you. I mean, I can make those connections elsewhere for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you just think about like the basis of like breaking down muscle. When you build a muscle to become larger, you actually have to break it down. And then what happens is that muscle where it's broken builds in between and creates bigger, right? So like in life, like when we go through hard things, when we're broken down, we build stronger, right? It creates.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So
sometimes the only way I learn through total failure.
That's one of my mottos in life is fail forward.
Yeah.
You look at the people that are successful and I'll say pretty content, happy, peaceful in life. And they're the people that don't mind, I'll say, failing and maybe more importantly, failing in front of others.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of a better thing to do if you got to be okay with failure fishing. Like so often and use it as motivation, right? So
yeah,
like, I just I got skunked at Pyramid Lake not too long ago here, and it was the first time I went out there, and it was a totally different setting for me. I never don't really fish a whole lot of still water, and that's kind of a unique spot. And
Yeah, I've heard. I've never fished that.
yeah, and we had bad conditions and stuff, and just didn't work out. But it
Yeah.
just made me want to go back. I got to go back there. They beat me this time. So
Right, but that's like in life. If you have a failure, it's supposed to make you like want to try again,
Yeah.
like try different, like try, is it the fly? Is it the day? Is it is it the conditions? Is it all the above?
yeah, Could
But
be.
yeah.
So where are you located, and how did you end up there?
I am currently in Leavenworth, Washington. If you know where that is, it's a little, they call it a Bavarian town, a little mountain town. It's
Got
like
German ancestral roots there, yeah?
yes. So like come get a sausage, and you can go to a Christmas store you can go to
Yeah.
many Christmas stores year round.
That's
buy
cool.
your
Yeah.
nutcrackers, and it's fun. It's definitely been an experience living in I'll say it like a vacation destination, tourist trap town, although
Yeah.
I'm well enough off the beaten path that I do not have to partake in any of that should I choose not to, which I usually don't.
It can be real annoying. I mean, I worked in a tourist trap location here in Sacramento, old Sacramento, if anybody's familiar about it. And it's something else. It sounds cool in theory, and then you get there and you're there for like 3 years and you're like, oh man, this is undoable.
Yeah, well, case in point, my neighbors just listed their house because they work from home, but their hours are that they still have to work, I'll say a normal work week, like, and have the weekends to do stuff. And where I'm located, I am like from my driveway, I hope this doesn't give too much away. I'm like 10, 15 minutes from some of the trailheads into the enchantments, if you know what the enchantments are, and that whole area there. So when I moved here, it was in the dead of winter. And I've been here vacationing and whatnot. This is the family's second home that I'm in right now. And so, but not staying here at any length of time. And so it's been very interesting as when there was 3 feet of snow on the ground, driving up the canyon to where the road closed for the snowmobiles, and I could run the dog and not see a human. And now I drive up the canyon on the weekends, and there's just like cars everywhere, and it's just, and the neighbors are like, yeah, we can't go anywhere on the weekends. So it's not, it has its ups and its downs. I kind of feel like I'm sometimes the grumbly local at the market. If I find that I stopped in at the wrong time or on the wrong day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I said, it's a fun experience, and it is fun living at elevation and learning snow and learning mountains and learning bears.
Okay.
They come out in the spring and everything like that. So yeah.
So, and you're pretty well located to get into some fishing without a super deep drive.
Well, yeah. In fact, like my drive I've just been over here for a short while, and this is just a temporary stay. I'm on my way for a more permanent location here in the next couple months to Lewiston, Clarkston area. So to the Clearwater, Grand Ron Snake system there, which is still steelhead country.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing about here, like I'm literally a property off of where Icicle Creek and the Wenatchee have their confluence.
Okay.
But the Wenatchee has been closed for years and years. Icicle Creek, I haven't seen anything. I looked it up the other day, couldn't find any information. But last year they didn't release it until like right before, which that's typical Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. But each their own. Do a small, it's like a 6-week like spring Chinook fishery in Icicle Creek.
Okay.
Up above where they run Icicle Creek, they have like the irrigation canal that comes out of it to feed all the apple orchards and everything. And so you can fish up above that for Chinook. At least you could last year, the past couple of years. Watch it be the 1 year I'm here to do it. It won't be available. But and that's kind of how I feel about coming full circle back to the Skykomish. When I go back home, I'll say back home, I'm still in the process of getting out of Western Washington. So I'm over the path, Highway 2 a lot. And once I hit Stevens Pass and come down on the west side, it's the Ty River and the Foss and they come in and they make the South Fork of the Skykomish, which then runs down. We have the Miller that comes in Beckler, and then the North Fork comes in around Index, and it runs down the rest of the way. But that river too has been
you fish all those though?
I have.
Yeah.
I'll say they are, as I have been expanding my fishing and my knowledge of fishing to different parts of, I'll say, the country. I wish I could say world, but I'll say vicariously through others. Washington is a really hard place to fish. And we can get into the politics and all of that stuff, but for whatever reason, it is what it is. And I'll say part of it's terrain, access, how management, all those things, but it's just it's a difficult fishery. So I've had to, this is where I learned to fish. This is where I've my home waters. And so I'll say it's been good though, because I'll akin it to your Pyramid Lake experience. You go out, you get skunked, or you don't have, I'll say, the immediate success or the consistency that you might have in other fisheries,
especially steelhead. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And so that's made for me fishing. I'll say if I was brought up on a bass lake and was just pulling them out left and right, and then came and experienced this, I'd be like, half a day. No, no, thank you. Take me back to Bassy on the pond. But this was my, I'll say, initial experience in fishing, in fly fishing. I mean, I began as a steelheader. The first rod I ever held in my hand, not even a gear. Well, I might have held a gear rod of my kids that they got for Christmas because I had to move it from behind the Christmas tree. But a two-handed stay rod was the first fly rod I ever had. So.
Way cool. Yeah. I mean, okay. Well, you're sending us into an interesting direction, because I read that as I was doing prep for this interview, like an article that started off saying that, quote, many anglers cut their teeth fly fishing the Pacific Northwest on the Skykomish. And I was curious, like, why do they have to make it sound so easy? Like, it seemed like they're like, oh, this is where everybody learns. And or does that ring true? Is that where you first started, or?
Well, I'll say, like, were they talking more about like the aspect of fishing, angling, and catching fish?
I'm assuming,
or were they talking about like just the art of spay or spay casting? Because spay casting, I'll say, if you want to get into some history, like Deck Hogan, and there's a lot of those kind of Pacific Northwest OG, guys, where I'll say, so Deck's book was the first book I ever had, his A Passion for Steelhead. And so he talks about places and there's pictures, and I'm like, that's where, if I take the quote unquote long way home, that's my spot. So I'm like, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. And I'm just kind of wondering if it's kind of one of those things that it's a river that is, I'll say, it's close enough to the suburban Seattle metropolis, but has better access as far as getting in there for walk-in waiting than, say, the Snoqualmie. There's a lot of, you really need a boat to be able to access any decent fishing. And I would say if you do have a boat on the Sky, that's definitely helpful. But if you get to know it, or it's a home river when you're spunky enough and like to, I think that, to me, that's part of angling and fishing, is that experience of just kind of going out and trying to figure it out and find the spots. And,
absolutely.
Step off the edge, chest deep into the water because you didn't expect it. That's, we all have those stories. And I think that, if you took all those away, that's what fishing is.
Yeah, I'm definitely mostly a walk and wade angler. I don't have a boat. I have a kayak, but I don't fish from it a whole lot. And I like looking around, finding the new spots. And definitely part of the fun, for sure.
It is.
I also read about all the different fish found in the system, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Skykomish, you have resident trout, a couple different runs of steelhead, we got sea run cutthroats, coho pink, and chum salmon. Did I miss anything?
Did we talk about dollies, bull trout?
No, that wasn't mentioned in the article I read. Maybe
nobody likes to mention those guys.
Those are cool.
They're my favorite.
I was wondering if there's any sucker fish or any other fish that people don't even want to mention in there.
You know what's interesting is I usually, whenever I go and fish a river for the first time, I usually pull a whitefish out. The whitefish.
Yeah.
I don't believe I have pulled a whitefish out of the Skykomish. So, but that would be a good question. I can look into that. I don't have an answer to that. I want to say there's probably the answer, and then there's the real answer that we actually don't know.
Yeah. Do you target?
What? Where?
Do you target all of those? I mean, are you mostly just looking for steelhead?
I would say I began targeting simply steelhead when the fishery was open. And then as that river, like last year, that river was only they opened it for opening day weekend, which was Memorial Day weekend, and then it shut down.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I kind of will take it when it's open. If it was open for coho, if it's open, if it's an odd year and it's open for pinks, let's go for pinks. Like I love that river enough that standing in that river is kind of home. So
yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what makes it special for you. Like, is it the first place that you fished, or is it like what about it?
I would say it is the first place that I fished, and it's one of the places that I'll say I have memories of as a little girl, even though I didn't grow up on the river or spend time on the river necessarily. I can remember, I have memories of it driving Highway 2 as a little girl. And it's been a place where I've gone in non-fishing situations with my kids. And so everyone just kind of, like you said, gone and explored and done, and there's some beautiful, beautiful areas all along it. And so it's just got some really good, holds some very good memories for me. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
And you get into some steelhead on there every once in a while.
And there's steelhead every once in a while. Yeah. I believe from the things I hear, maybe, I don't know, you hear bits and pieces, and are they old wives' tales or this or that? But I think there's a bigger and maybe more steelhead in that system than we know about, or maybe people want to let on. I don't know. But regardless, the regulations are what they are. And so
I was on a work meeting the other day. They ask you those like cheesy icebreakers. Like they asked like, what's everybody's favorite animal?
Yeah, what's your favorite breakfast sandwich? That's what I ask in my fly fishing classes.
And I said a steelhead trout, and everybody had to ask me why. And one of the reasons I said was because there's so much unknown about them that like we don't know a whole lot about what happens when they get in the ocean. There's a lot of unknowns about them that I think that's cool. Besides for the fact that I like chasing them and failing most of the time, but
yeah,
they live in beautiful spots, thankfully. So
yeah, they do, and I like going after a creature that likes to kick my ass and lead the score hard.
Yeah, yeah. The anadromous fish are what I dig the most, right? Because they prove how badass they are by going out and coming back in, and sometimes multiple times, and it's not an easy feat. So
yeah, there was they have some of them tagged, which there was, I want to say she was in the snake system, and they have this to get from the mouth of the Columbia up to where she was. I think she was 5 dams in. And they have her recorded, I think, doing that 3 times.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like,
yeah. I mean,
I'm an animal. Like when you really, like when you are an angler, or even if not an angler, when you spend time, I'll say near water, especially rivers, and you understand the power of it, and even dams, whatever it is, or like I'm just every day I drive past the Wenatchee and it's spraying and all of it, the melt, it's running so high and so fierce through the canyon. And I'm like, there are steelhead, like it's so incredible to think like what these creatures can do.
Yeah.
It really is. And then how little we do know about them. And then that kind of, I don't know if you're ready to go here, but kind of brings me to like why I tie flies and why I do what I do is that like, and I'll say where I've come to hone in on, I'll say my niche or my expertise with tying and how I want to, I'll say, use that to either educate, like, we'll just say push forward my own agenda. No. But like, for example, I think in all things in life, going back to fishing and life and them mirroring each other, it's like, there's a time and a season for all things. There's, a time and a place. Sometimes I'm at these fly fishing expos, these fly tying expos, and you go and there's companies and you got like these $2, these $4 bins. And it's like my flies that are similar to that, I'm selling between 16 and 20 a pop. And it's like, well, you could go down and buy enough, depending on how much you steelhead for your whole steelhead season, as opposed to buying one or two, right? Well, but then look at what is I say when we slow down in all things in life, everything gets better. And when you look at like, do I want to go, what is my experience? Like, what is the end experience I want to be, whether it's steelheading in general or steelheading on this particular trip that I've booked or that I'm going on? Am I just looking to net a fish? Am I looking to just stand in a river? Am I looking to swing a fly that was made by someone that like seriously thinks they are a steelhead themselves? But I put time and energy and thought into, I'll say, each fly I tie. And I know it sounds super cheesy and cliche, but I really, as I'm tying each one of these flies, I think because I've had experience with steelhead, it's like, and in talking about how magnificent those creatures are, it's like, how can I honor them? And those are my thoughts and my energy as I'm tying this fly. Now, there's people that can say like, that's hogwash, like whatever, where's the $2 bin? And you know what? There's a place and a time. There's a table in the cafeteria for everybody. It takes all kinds. But for me, I think that I have found enough of clientele and enough of desire out there to have the type of experience that I am trying to put my flies into for people. And that's not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. But, if you want to have that experience, and just kind of like on the guiding side of things, like, I mean, I buy mass produced flies. I mean, when a fly is going to end up in a tree on the third cast, you don't spend your nights tying those flies or doing those things. But when you're going out to have, say, an experience, say, I got 3 days on the Skagit this season and 1 day on the sock. And it was like those flies that I fished were so carefully picked, or even brought my stuff to the Airbnb and tied the fly there for it. So it's fun too to hear feedback from people of why they buy my flies or how they fish them, or it's cool.
That's rad. I like that approach 100%.
But I think if we all get back to, I think the pendulum swings in all directions. And in some ways, like we got to this great place in life where we can mass produce things and do them for super inexpensive and all the things, but we can also, maybe there's some middle ground between, or different day, different experience. So I just try and offer what I can in the way that I can, and know that it's not for everybody. And
so you brought up guiding. Did you hire guides on the Skykomish before you felt comfortable with it? Did you go out fishing with anybody?
I have never, well, I've never hired a guide, and I'm going to have the couple of guides that I've hired be like, you hired me. I've only hired guides, I'll say, out of state in fisheries that I'm not familiar with.
Well, yeah.
I did not pick up a fly rod until I was over 40. And I am a little bit, so I was a little, going back to the powerlifting, I was hugely into powerlifting when somehow I got into steelhead flies. And I've always been artistic. I've been published internationally with paper crafting, colors, ink, that kind of stuff. So I do have some background in that.
Yeah.
And so sparkles, feathers, all of that.
You're crafty.
Yeah, it just plays into it. And so, but I am also very stubborn, and I was powerlifting, and this Girl Who Ties Flies account was an account I started because I was too embarrassed to post the flies on my powerlifting account. And so I didn't want anybody to know. I think I had one friend, it was my son's best friend's dad. He was kind of a fly fisher. And I think I told him that I bought like a rod, like off eBay, and I bought waders in secret. And like, I didn't want anybody to know. And I kind of kept them all in the back of my Suburban, and I quote unquote take the long way home. And I was all about like Jack Hogan, the books, the YouTube videos, go do it. Books, YouTube videos. I mean, it was just this circular thing of just.
I mean, I'm not even up there, and that's what influenced me to do the two-handed casting, especially because it was like West Coast. I'm in California. I'm like, these guys up in the Pacific Northwest are like pioneering this thing in a way, and like that's super cool. And I'm not that far. Like that definitely got me stoked.
Yeah. So it's definitely, that, like you said, those are the rivers to do it on. And I think, Spey really, stems from Scotland, if you really want to go back in the history of it. But when you get into I'll say the Skagit and
that's what I'm talking
Pacific
about.
Northwest. I'll say take on it. Those guys that kind of pioneered that, like they're really incredible. And like to be able to take, because even
super innovative, wild stuff.
And to be able to, I'll say, I've never been to Scotland to actually physically see those rivers or feel them in comparison to mine at home, but they're huge. I mean, they are just, to be able to sometimes get it out where those steelhead are, because those rivers are so vast. It's like, it just blows my mind. My casting ability is not there. And it does have to do with the lines. I mean, there, you can go into that. I mean, that's a podcast, every single line or rod or like combinations of, do you want to go Skagit, Scandi, mid belly? I mean, they're so, and how they cast and the conditions, but I'll just say for the most part, like having those big rivers to play with from the get-go, I'll say I was super, super blessed. Like, I think I live in a part of the world that, I know everybody probably feels they live, I live in the best part of the world, but I feel like I'm really, really fortunate to live where I do and to have had the opportunity to, I'll say, walk in the footsteps of giants, so to speak, and like stand in the spot where Jack Hogan, his lessons, and
I want to feel about that way about where I live. I don't hate Sacramento at all. I'm in Sacramento, and I am also blessed to have a river really close, 5-minute drive, the Lower American River, which is also fairly big and good for a long rod. And like, so I practice casting out there. Usually don't catch many fish. There's not a whole lot of fish there, but I wish I could say the same thing that you did about where I live. I think that's probably my underlying life goal, is to end up somewhere where I feel that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel that way, but at the same time, there's like a little bit of a sadness about it, because I feel like this isn't the right analogy because Cinderella had to leave the party because she had to get home. But I feel like maybe I showed up to the ball after expecting to see Cinderella after she left. Like, I feel like I'm on the side of the castle with my nose up against the window and going like, where'd everybody go? Like, I heard there was a party here, just because of what steelheading once was, I'll say back in the 80s and the 90s.
Sure.
On these rivers. But it's still cool to be able to, I'll say, when they are open, have that experience and have the opportunity to go out there. Just, there have been, I'll say, in the past, when it was open more, just standing in those places, and that there's something about that Pacific Northwest, like misty, Sasquatch weather. It's just, you can't, I have not experienced it anywhere else.
It's real. It's magic. It's for real. Yeah.
It is. It's cool. And came I'll say absolutely full circle. A month ago, I was able to be up on the Skagit at camp with Deck Hogan and Marty Howard and Marty's brother Mike and
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah.
and a couple of the boys that up here that have really, I'll say, embraced me and taken me in and treated me like nobody different. And that would be Jordan Chudray, and he was there with me. And it was, I mean, I think we were sitting in the food tent, we're listening. Marty's sitting there like picking through his box of flies. What's he gonna fish tomorrow? And showing us what he hooked on today. And I'm just like jaw to floor, and Jordan sitting next to me. And I think I'm kind of like, will you pinch? Like, is this really happening? And Deck is across from us with my copy of his book, going through it and telling the backstories.
Oh man.
No, and it was just like
you were getting DVD commentary on it live.
Yeah. And we're sitting at Howard Miller on the side of the Skagit, and I think I was too much in shock to cry, because I am a crier. If you ask my kids, like, I'm a blubbery crier. I cry over everything. And I mean, if you would have told me, like in 2019, when I started tying flies and Deck's book was the first book I ever bought in fishing. I thought you could only catch steelhead with spay rods.
Yeah.
That's what I thought before I
like that. Why not? Yeah.
Well, yeah. And yeah, we won't talk about that. I took that to extreme on the Skagit in April when I hollered at the gear guys in their boat that tried to park right in front of my cast. But I was nice about it, but I did tell them they could come back there. But yeah, no, it's super cool. And it was awesome to be able to just sit there and to just really, I'll say, take in. It felt like sitting, I don't want to say that Deck and Marty are old, but we'll say uncle. Like at uncle's house, like your grandpa, like when your family you'd get like those stories told down to you by your family member, by your grandpa or your uncles or whatever. And I felt like a little kid on Christmas. It was.
I've listened to quite a few interviews with Deck on different shows, and I could tell that I know what he's already doing the same kind of thing on a lot of those shows. So I bet it was awesome. Yeah.
It was. He is, I mean, I don't know him well, but from the time I've had with him, he feels like such a genuine human, and you can feel his excitement and his love for the sport and for steelhead. Just the way he talks about whether it's the memory of whatever that picture was, or if he's talking about how to skate a fly. I mean, his passion for it. I mean, passion for steelhead, that's what he named the book, is really incredible. And it's so cool to, I'll say, be in that energy with somebody who, I'll say, has the same love for something that you do, like, or that is like your idol, or it was definitely full circle moment. So I can retire and hang up my wife.
So you mentioned you didn't really hire guides. Did you do a casting lesson or anything like that? I mean, I also started pretty late. I'm 43, and I didn't start fly fishing until I was over 30, like just over 30. And I didn't get a two-handed rod till probably 5 years ago. So
yeah, I got it. My problem is when I got into it was fall of 2019.
Okay.
Then COVID hit.
We interrupt this episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tyers to bring you a special message from the United States government. The Surgeon General's office has just announced that addiction to suckable nicotine products is now an official health crisis. Not only do products like Zyn, Zone, Zoin, suck pucks, tongue tinglers, throat gobblers, or lip lumps cause life-ruining addictions, they also lead to several adverse health issues like wet lung disease, frog poisoning, brain crispiness, skin hardening, and making your penis bigger, but not in a way that's fun or cool. Sucking adult suckables makes your wiener so big that it's hard to use, and nobody will want to touch it or put it inside of them because it just won't fit. So while it might sound good in theory, it's a nightmare in practice. Trust me, I've been there. I'm there now. Also, using adult nicotine suckables doesn't just affect the individuals who suckle them. There are also risks when it comes to second-hand sucking. If you've got a suckable in your mouth and you drink from a bottle of homemade wine wine and then somebody else drinks from the same bottle, they can fall victim to secondhand sucking. The poisons and nicotines within your mouth will inevitably leak into the bottle during your sip, and those poisons will slide right down the gullet of the next unsuspecting fool who happens to want to sample some of your toilet wine. Within no time, they'll be dead, or worse, and it'll be all your fault. Sucking adult suckables might sound like a fun hobby, but you can quickly fall into the habit of chain sucking, which is the act of using adult suckables so frequently that you put a new one in your mouth even before you've removed the sucked out one. Chain sucking is 3 times as dangerous as single sucking, and single sucking is really dangerous already, so please, say no to adult suckables. Don't put nicotine bags in your mouth. If you want to put something in your mouth, I've got a swollen, greasy, uncooked, uncut pork burrito that you're welcome to ram down your stupid throat.
So it was a lot of time. It was, if you want to learn it, you're going to self-teach.
I tied a lot of flies during COVID.
Yeah, that's when I really got good at tying flies. And I'll say, like, then it was okay, because I had 5 kids at home.
Oh, no shit. Yeah.
I had 5 kids that were at home that did not set foot in a school for 2 years.
Yeah, man, I have 2. You were double that. I can't imagine.
It was like, so it was definitely after all the Zoom sessions and this and that, it was, okay, I've tied this many flies, get in the car, we're going to the river, we're going to go test flies. So I would say it was being self-taught, which is probably why I cast so horribly. And then once I'll say kind of things started opening back up, 2022, spay claves started happening again. I just started going wherever I could go and just kind of was, I don't know, you could probably ask any industry person. I was probably there and I was probably annoying and I was probably trying to ask all the questions. But I really feel that that's the best way to go about learning, is especially with spay. It's such an art of, I'll say, you've got to feel it. You know what I'm saying? And it can be explained a billion different ways, and you can hear all the load the rod and do this and pause and set your anchor. And to most people are, huh? And so I think, like, the more people that you can get in front of and hear their methodology for, I'll say, number one, how they talk about it, how they explain it, and then just watching how they do it. It's interesting how you can hear the same thing from somebody else, and it's like the way they said it, it's a word they use just clicks for you. I was listening, I don't know if you know who Travis Johnson is.
I don't think so.
A guide out of Oregon, big steelhead guide. And he, spaycaster, teaches, does a lot of online stuff. And I've followed him and I've listened to him kind of bits. He's actually, I think, I don't know what place he came in. It's gonna be horrible. I want to say 3rd at Spayorama this year. He can distance.
Yeah.
But he wasn't talking about distance. He was just at the Bellevue fly fishing show. But I was listening to how he described moving his body, allowing the rod to rotate. And it was some of the best dialogue I've heard in how spay is explained that I've heard. No offense to some other people, but some people that have probably been spay casting for almost as long as I've been alive. So
yeah, it's a unique thing, right? And I'm a kinetic learner. Like, I got to do it. I have to do it myself, right? Like, I can hear you talk about it all the time, and I'll probably stop paying attention, or I won't absorb it, or I don't understand it. And it's tough with spay casting because it is all feel, right? And like, so doing that on your own and being that stubborn like I am about stuff, like, it's been very beneficial. Like, I took a casting lesson early on after I started two-handed casting, trying to learn from YouTube and stuff and going out on my own. I was like, I need to take a lesson. And I took one and it helped a whole bunch. I mean, I picked up 2 basic casts, right? And I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to get better and stuff. And now I'm getting to that point where I'm like, I know I'm doing a bunch of shit completely wrong, right? And it's like, I'm still getting the cast out there. Skagit heads are super forgiving in that way. Like, you can throw a pretty shitty cast and it'll still go.
Yep. And that's the thing
yeah.
is shitty casts still catch fish.
Sure,
So
exactly.
you're kind of
That
like,
too,
hey, it's
right?
out there.
But a buddy of mine is a casting instructor down at the Golden Gate casting ponds,
Yep.
and I was fishing with him the other day. He's like, you should think about taking another lesson. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, I'm a musician my whole life, and so I'm not afraid of people telling me I'm doing something wrong or like you can do it another way, do it better, whatever. Not taking it personally, right? And so I like getting those other opinions on it and seeing like what I can get, because like you said, they all have their own way of explaining stuff, and 5 out of 6 of them aren't going to make any sense to you. Like
Right.
one of them's going to click though, right?
Or you're going to be able to take a little bit from each one, put it together and make what you need. And that's how I explain more fly fishing than fly tying when I'm teaching like my 101 courses and stuff like that, is that, you know what, fly fish, all of this is, I mean, there are mechanics. Don't get me wrong. There are some mechanics to casting, whether it's single-handed or spay, but within that, how it's explained, or how your body, if you've got a petite torso or whatever it is, you have to adjust or make amends for.
Definitely.
You know, it's kind of like I was listening to a podcast one time with a fishing guide, and she was saying, yeah, you could get 7 different fishing guides sitting in a circle and ask them the same question, and you'll get 7 different answers.
That's what I love about it, really.
And so, and that's what I try and tell people in fly fishing when they get into it or they're new to it, is that everybody, with the exception of there's some mechanics, it's all just people's opinion, including what I'm saying. I'm just one of those people too. So take mine, take this part, go to as many people, take the spay lessons from as many different people as you can afford to and make time for, or watch as many YouTube videos, go to as many spay claves, cast as many rods, try as many lines, because it's the combination of all of those bits and pieces that you make up your own, I'll say, fly box that is unique to you, how you fish, how you catch, and all of that. And when you do that, that's when you see people that are truly, I'll say, incredible. And by incredible or beautiful anglers, I don't necessarily mean like what they look like or how they produce fish, but how they're able to take everything and make it work for them.
Yeah, just make their own path with it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody wants you to, and you can listen to everybody, but really we're each here on this earth to do us, right? To do our own thing. So why not in fly fishing too? Make it you.
Yes, we're all actors on a stage, right? We got to play the part. We got to play the part.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too crazy. I don't want to get crazy. I don't know.
This has gone from fly fishing to a life philosophy.
Okay, let's talk a little. What are the flies that you think anglers should always have in their box on the Skykomish? Well, besides the ones that you make.
Well, I always keep my flies, but you know what? It depends on what I would just say I always have to make the caveat of it depends on what your purpose is. Like if you want to go out there and you want to swing classic steelhead flies, then I would say you need a Skykomish Sunrise, and you need some of those, I'll say, classic steelhead patterns, some Duck Hogan patterns, and Popsicle is really good there. But if you just want to go and get fish, then I'm going to tell you to fish what probably anybody else would tell you to fish, and that's worms and woolly buggers. No, so it just kind of depends, I think, what you're looking for. There are a lot of things. I have caught fish on classic flies. I've caught steelhead on little woolly bugger, sparkle minnow type.
What classic patterns do you like?
On that one, it is like, I'll say the one that I've hooked on is the Skykomish Sunrise. Like that's the only, because it was like the name. You couldn't not do that.
It's made for it. Yeah, you
right.
Gotta do that.
My first steelhead, I'll say, that I ever landed was on that river, and it was my only other one and it was on like a woolly bugger. It was on like a orange and reddish, like just.
I've never caught a fish on a woolly bugger.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, I know. I know it sounds kind of weird.
Are you being 100% serious?
Yeah, I've fished them a few times and I've never caught a fish on them. But I just kind of never fished the pattern, not for any reason. It just wasn't
Okay.
one
So maybe it's
wasn't
just
one I'd pick.
okay. Yeah, it's kind of, I'll say, kind of cliche again, but between the rivers, and if you balance them out, kind of make them a little leachy, like they work in Stillwater and the lakes around here, and then they work great in the sea run cutthroats.
I'm getting more interested in them now. Like I never, after all the years that I've been fly fishing now, since it was about 30 or 31. Like now they're interesting. I've seen all kinds of different variations you can tie on them and super cool shit. You know.
And that right there, I think is the key. Like if I had to pick one pattern of fly to fish, like for the rest of my life, it would be the woolly bugger, because you can make variations on that easy, and you can do so much with it. And it, like, I taught a class last month at Emerald Water Anglers in Seattle, and we did what's called wormy buggers. One of my fellow guides out of there, she guides on the Sound a lot, and those produce a lot. You make a woolly bugger that's just kind of in that, like, I'll say that dark red claret, and you just kind of make the body more like a sparkle minnow, that dubbed body, and you just don't have the hackle on it. And that red marabou off the back, it's wormy.
Yeah, that's cool.
They go for them.
So what kind of rod setup do you prefer on the Skykomish then? What do you fish out there?
I'm usually on a 7-weight or an 8-weight spay rod, and I'm unless I forget my Skagit line, which I had done once this past season because I had been fishing scandies over in the Clearwater, but just a Skagit head, and you can get a lot done with. I'm not too fancy. Like I'll put a Skagit head on and then run like a 10-foot sink tip, and then like 2 to 4 feet of 15 to 20 pound maximum. And like,
about what I do here.
I mean, I think that was the biggest thing for me, that the hump of getting over was not necessarily the casting or that, but it was trying to wrap my brain around all the lines and the sink tips and the shooting heads, and it just felt like such chaos to me. There were so many things. I mean, no offense, maybe it's just because a woman hasn't been there, but like the organization and explanation of it was not there. And I kind of, as I was able to, I'll say, put the systems into place for myself, for my own explanations of it, I was like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah, it is an intimidating part of it for sure. There's so many pieces.
Well, and I think too, coming from which I don't think it would have really mattered if I would have gear fished too much, but even if I would have had experience with a single hand rod, I think it would have helped me, because even with a single hand rod, you're taking that fly line and you're just breaking it down into those 4 pieces: your running line, your shooting head, your sink tip, and you're just. And when I did it that way and explained it to myself, and then went through all the different scenarios, I was able to then really just, my brain could lock and load, and I was able to do it. But before that, it felt like, I didn't even know. But I think if I had been able to compare it to like a single hand fly line and just make that comparison of, we're just breaking it down into pieces.
I wish I could confirm that for you, because that's where I came from, and I still was pretty dang confused. I mean, like, but once you kind of get the idea of what makes it work, you're like, okay, you're like you said, there's these 4 elements, these 4 pieces that you need, and then you just got to kind of make sure those things line up to work for your rod and like how you fish, right? Like I've been really geeking out on running line this last year or so and trying different stuff for the first time, and like, I found something that I totally dig after trying other stuff for days.
Well, and I think going back to how you were talking about casting, and you really have to, it's something that you really have to feel, right? It's like with anything else, go back to powerlifting or nutrition, like everybody wants a magic pill, right? Everybody wants to go into the fly shop or walk into the spay clave and walk up to the industry rep or the Simon and say, what would you use? What would you throw? What would you put on this rod? Well, what they would put on that might work for you. But you know what? If you went up 20 grains or you put a different tip, would that fly? Would it work better for you? You won't know until, like you said, you go out there and you try it, and it's time under tension. And I think people are either, I mean, it takes time and effort. You got to put on the waders, you got to drive the river, you got to do all the things.
I fished the wrong rod and setup for a couple of years, really. I was switching out heads and stuff like that, and different lengths of sink tips, and it was like it got to the point where I was like, the rod wasn't working for me, right? Like I tried everything, and I just over the last couple of years figured out what I like about rods and like what I want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I want like that deep load, like in the middle, like all the way in the middle. I want it's all feel right, and I want to feel every second of it. Like I want to know exactly where I'm at. So the more I can get away with in that sense, the more noodly of a rod that I can have. Like I'll take it, you know, to a certain extent. But I'm just figuring that out now. It's took me 5 years or so.
Well, it's not that, I mean, I'm going to probably get shot down by the industry here, but it's not that they make it easy. I mean, a little bit feels like they kind of try and, I don't know if it's that.
You got to do a lot of research on your own about other people talking about the rods and them.
Well, and even I think there's so much to be said for what we hear, the names we hear, what we see somebody using, the however much money is spent in promotional advertisement, however you want to look at it. Like, I would love to watch people, and I'm going to get shot down, be able to go test out some spay rods. Like, let's have them covered up. Like, just tell me what rod feels the best. I know you think you want a Sage R8 or
you mean no
or you want
brand.
This.
You're saying no brand.
Like if you want a fast action or a slow action, or you want that rod to load in a certain way, let me hand you 4 rods that I know load that way, but I'm not going to tell you what they are.
Yeah,
you tell me which one. You go cast those, and let's talk about what one feels better. And what if it's the one that you thought, I mean, I kind of sometimes do this. I've gotten to the point where I have 3 different spay rods, and I'm kind of fixated in my brain on the one that I think I like the most, that I want to use the most.
Yeah.
And the one that I actually cast the best with isn't that one. But I like to say that that's my favorite rod because it sounds good. I think, like, if we, going back to slowing down and all the things in life, and again, I'll say, if you're going to be spending anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000 on something to go have fun with in a river,
I won't
get it, do it, buy the one. Do what feels good, what makes you cast the best, that's going to give you the best experience. Not the one that's on sale, or not the one that the rep told you to buy, or the one that you think has better resale value. I don't care.
And if you can find a fly shop out there that does that, sets you up for the blind casting for you to find your rod, don't let them close. Like, don't ever let them close, because that would be special. I mean, my local fly shop just closed, and they would let you rent out heads. They would let you take them on the water and fish them, bring them back, and
what fly shop?
That was Keeney's here in Sacramento.
Okay, that's awesome. They'd let you do all that. Like, that's a good fly shop. Like,
yeah, they were cool.
I fished with a gal last month up on the Skagit, and she had gone into the confluence up in Bellingham, and they're so great up there. And Scott, the owner, gave her. And it's so cool when it's like meant to be. It's like, oh, I just brought this reel in like the other day, and it was just fun. Let her go try it out because she's looking for getting a spay reel. And
there's another good local shop. They're a little farther from me, called Fly Fishing Specialties, and they seem to be great too. And I'm gonna have to go out to them more often. But
I've only been in it's called the Fly Shop.
Oh, in Redding, yeah.
Up in Redding. Oh, okay, you're in Sacramento.
Yeah, that's just a couple hours north of me.
Okay, all right.
That's a great shop too. I've been in there a bunch of times.
That was my first float trip ever was on the Sac, and it was with the women down in Southern Oregon. And long story boring, there were 6 of us women, and we showed up there. It was like 7 a.m, walked in the fly shop, and I'm forgetting the guy's name. little guy who's been in there forever.
Sandy?
And I have a picture. It's on my Instagram.
Is it Sandy?
Yes.
Yeah,
And he's like, and the picture, I think the picture speaks 1,000 words. I don't know how I got this picture, but it was one of those, he's standing there, and I did it in black and white, so it looks really good. His arms are wide open and the expression on his face, and the women are just kind of milling about looking at some flies and stuff. And he was just like, in all my 27 years, I've never witnessed 6 women walk in my fly shop at 7 in the morning. It was the cutest. He was the happiest camper. It was a cute experience.
It's kind of a sausage party. I mean, do you feel isolated at all being a female in the fly fishing world?
There's moments where I do and moments where I don't. And I think it comes down to mindset. And I think it's one of those things that if you want to look for it, you'll find it. And that's not to say that we don't need to ignore things that maybe are there. But I also think that you can choose to make something a bigger deal than it needs to be, or you can choose to just kind of, I'll say, push forward and do your best in grassroots and do what you can and hope for the best. With that being said, yeah, I do sometimes definitely. I mean, it's been one of the things that's been, I'll say, is it a hindrance or a help in the industry sometimes? Like, I think that there have been certain situations and opportunities where, because I am a woman or female fly tyer, I'm maybe given, if I were a dude, would I be given the same, you know what I'm saying? It just maybe, but I think definitely there's been a few times where it's been like, because I've been a woman and that's kind of a unique, thing. I know definitely in the new job that I'm taking on, that was one of the things, is they thought it was super cool to be able to bring a female into that arena and that fly shop and that community.
Are you down to talk about that? Like, well, what's this new opportunity?
I don't have too many details, but I'm headed to Lewiston and just going to be right now. North 40 House of Fly. I contract with them. They do the small batch American fly tires.
Oh, cool.
Which allow us small batch tires to set our own prices, tie our own flies, keep everything in-house, which is super cool. And so
I'm making a note. I'm making a note of that. I've never heard of that. That sounds super cool.
So they are a company and they're off of I'll say a larger corporate entity. So I think there's sometimes that can be looked at. Sometimes I think people kind of look down their nose at kind of larger big box or that kind of thing. But I'll just say the opportunities that this establishment has given me and where I feel that I can go and they go is just incredible. And I'm excited to see where things go. So it might, as it stands now, that's about all I can say. But looking into things that I'm into, fly fishing, I'll say education, and just what we've been talking about, associating life to fly fishing. And I kind of found fly fishing at a time in my life where it really helped support the things that I was going through in life. And it allowed me to have an outlet that I think otherwise, I don't know what I would have done. And there's something about water and the movement of water.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, that's my connection.
And that's probably my connection too, is it actually makes me not look like an idiot just standing in a river. I have something that I look like I'm doing.
Yeah, no,
the cat's out of the bag. The secret's out. Amanda really doesn't like to fish or tie flies. She just cares what people think about her in public. No.
I'm an ocean guy. I grew up by the beach, and that's where I really feel comfortable. And the river's that connection for me, since I'm not really close enough to do that every day.
Yeah, no, I've been, and I mean, I could probably go put my feet in the river, but I'll just say I have been so fortunate this past 5-6 months where whether I have to drive east, west, I am driving along I'm either driving along the Wenatchee, I'm driving along the Skykomish. I mean, it's just, being able to drive along that and see that, because I'm kind of like you. I grew up very beachy, like the ocean, In fact, I didn't think I'd ever be able to move from West Coast. So going to
That's how I feel now.
going to be a landlocked steelhead, I know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned I thought you mentioned me plans of maybe eventually moving to Montana. Did I hear that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to end up. I mean, wouldn't we all love to be on Yellowstone Ranch or Brad Pitt as a river runs through it? No, I would love Montana. There are some places in Montana that have my heart that I am hoping that is the universe speaking to me that there is a time and a place where I will be able to reside there and
You just gotta
spend some time there.
You gotta scale down to the trout spay though, probably, right?
Yeah, right now I'm still steelhead strong and can't. In fact, I tried to go to Montana, but the universe wouldn't let me.
Oh yeah.
I even was I was up Icicle Canyon and I committed to God and the universe and said, okay, we'll go to Montana unless you show me otherwise. And the next day it was the job offer and
How about it? Yeah. And I broke down in Yellowstone one time on tour with a band and was stuck there on waiting for parts and things to be fixed and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through Montana and stayed there a few different times around Billings and never had a fly rod with me. Never got to do any of that stuff any of the time I've been out there. So
it's incredible. Again, sometimes it's interesting to look at life. Sometimes I go like, you've had some really like wretched, like difficult experiences, but then I look at other things. I'm like, you realize you've had some really beautiful, incredible experiences that not very many people have. Like some of the places I've gotten on private land, I'll say, to fish in Montana. Pretty cool. I volunteered with Warriors in Quiet Waters.
Oh, cool.
And so with that, they're able to access and contract with individuals and entities. And one of the places we went was the Ruby River Preserve. Just incredible.
Man, I will give the Warriors in Quiet Waters a little shout at the end. Plug their org at the end of this episode. That's cool.
Yeah, they are a great organization. I'll say, as far as wherever your mindset or your politics or your thoughts lie with all of that, I'll say as far as an organization that really like does like a full circle experience and for its patrons, like the experience I went on, it was with caretakers of Purple Heart Vet. So they were all women, but that basically are given every ounce of everything they have every day to take care of somebody who's given everything they've had, right? So for them to be able to come out and have everything just catered to them, and the companies that donate and give, like Sims, and I mean, there's tons of or deer in headlights now, but I mean, those women go home with everything. I mean, rods, reels, waders, the taco bag, the backpacks, and not only that, but they give them gear bags to ship, to take everything home in, and they pay to have it shipped on the airplane. Like they just take care of all the details. And it's just so beautiful, because I know there's sometimes where it's like you're given a gift and it's like, that's awesome, but like, I can't deal with the logistics of this gift, so thank you, no.
Yeah, I get you. That's awesome.
But yeah, no, it was a good experience, and yeah, Montana's incredible. I was fortunate enough to be there. I was there on Easter, and I actually saw, well, my only the wolf I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
In the wild, just right out there between, I'll say, Island Park and West Yellowstone.
Quite cool.
Yeah.
So I understand there's a fly that a lot of the people that are buying your flies are getting, right? And I'm pretty sure I know which one it is from looking at your Instagram and stuff. But
I want to know what one it is that you think it is.
Oh, you want? Okay, I'll pull the picture of it.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Let me see if I'm right. Let's see. Come on.
Because I would say it's kind of time of year, like.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Well, like
I
if
could be
it's
wrong.
like an intruder, I'll say that's been pretty hard and heavy through this winter season. Now I'd say we're getting into more kind of
this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those ones are. Yep, those intruders. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's when I was browsing through, making up my decision, about what I thought it was. That's the one I settled on. But yeah, could you? I mean, this is audio only, not a visual podcast. So like, Could you go through like the materials that you use for it? Like what's the basic rundown of the recipe in there?
Yeah,
If you're cool with sharing that,
yeah, so that's just a 2-station intruder.
Okay.
And I'll say like, I mean, intruders, I mean, you can look up patterns, in books on the internet, YouTube. There's a
gajillion, yeah.
A gajillion. And so I'll say, and that's the thing with flies is it's like sometimes people get so snippy over, so, and it's like, can you really create it's a variation of a variation of a it just kind of let it go. Right. But so that I just try and incorporate, whatever pattern. So like an intruder and then just kind of make it my own. Like
it's just a platform, right? I mean,
there's some people that really like they're craft fur beasts and they just make dubbing loops out of craft fur that on those intruders. I do use flash, so I do use some synthetics, but for the most part, I'm using all natural materials. So I love Arctic fox, I love fin raccoon, and as much as it doesn't hold up as well, I'll say over the longevity, I love marabou and I love how it swims. I love how it reacts in the water. And I love how it catches fish. Yeah. So again, going back to, could you have a dozen flies or maybe this one fly, if you're going to fish it all day in the Skykomish or the Skagit and it's marabou, and you don't hook anything on it, you might not fish that one again, because it's depending on how many rocks you hook, right? And how much it's hitting bottom and getting beat up. But so that's just, I take that second station. I usually put like a chenille, like a UV chenille hotspot at the back of them, just because. Okay.
Behind that second station, between the.
Or even if I'm doing a single station, like I think that darker fly is a single kind of a station fly, more of like a hobo spay kind of a bug. And even on those, I'll take like a little chenille, like a pink, whatever hot spot there in the back. I'm a Lagarton girl. I love the Lagarton flat braids. I also like metal tinsel bodies, but not on intruders. I love the way that the flat braid works for those. So I'll put like a hot spot in there. And then usually my second station, I'm always using Arctic fox, just because it's a little bit
as the prop or whatever.
Like I call it like the shoulder or the prop. Yeah, because on that second station, because the Arctic fox, to me, the guard hairs and just the way the material is, it's a little bit thicker, it's a little bit shorter, and so that allows me how I like to design and my intruders is to have that first station kind of come over that second, where some intruders you'll see like it's actually two kind of full stations where the first one kind of overlaps, but mine it's almost like like this.
Okay.
I like that second or that trailing station to be the Arctic fox, and then I'll usually just do like a wrap of marabou over it, which that you're seeing that peachy color that I can't tell you how much marabou I went through dyeing that color.
Did you dye it? Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. We'll just, we're going to have to do something with that funky marabou, but, then I'll just usually
going to that length, really.
Right. Yeah. I'll put like a guinea or a pheasant or a silver pheasant as a collar, depending, usually.
I'm looking at them again.
Just depends on what. Usually it's color. So I may not have all colors in silver pheasant, but I have in guinea. So depending on the color of the fly. And then, like I said, just that flat braid up. And then for that station at the beginning, it was interesting because I was teaching class on intruders this week on a Zoom session. And we were talking about whether to make like a dubbing loop and a dubbing ball kind of as a prop against that, like that Arctic fox or that raccoon. And the individual that I was teaching, he's pretty good tire. And so I was like, well, why don't you do that dubbing loop? I said, I don't in mind, but do it. And because I like people to see what that experience is, which it works. But for me, when I use the fin raccoon or the Arctic fox in that station, and I'll say, I come in and I've got my dubbing, my hand is like my dubbing loop, the stuff that's sticking out the butt that I would normally trim down, I pull a little bit longer. And when I spin that, it creates, I'll say, enough of a thickness or a bump that it creates that dubbing ball.
Okay.
And so
It's thicker down there, right on the
down there
shank.
anyways.
Yeah,
and I have found that, at least for me, in tying massive amounts, like that is a step that I'm able to take out and almost create like that. And then for me, that comes down to time. And I will say, I'll probably have someone listen to this and be like, because there's all those people. I have not had a complaint yet.
I've been defaulting.
So go buy some of my flies for me if you have a complaint and test them out, and then you can tell me. But
I've been using the brushes.
Oh, I love brushes.
Instead of the dubbing ball prop. I love them too. And I want every fucking color. Like I want every single one. They're not cheap.
Right. What company? Do you have a specific company that you like?
Yeah, I like the EP brushes, and I've been using a lot of the 1.5 inchers, I believe is what they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a company called Fairflies?
I don't think so. No, they doing brushes too? Yeah.
Yeah. So
I probably follow them on Instagram. Like, no, I don't know what they are.
They are my favorite brushes. They blow everybody else out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, and they don't even pay me to say that. They should give me some free brushes.
Fair flies, right?
Fair flies. Yeah, they're a fair trade company.
Yeah, I follow them already. I knew I did.
Yeah. So.
And I'm looking at their brushes right now. They have a little display of them. Right on. All
yeah, I taken those brushes, like if you just have, like, if you wanted to make the most killer steelhead flies, you get yourself a handful of those brushes, some Lagerton flat braid, and you just flat braid up a shank, give 2 wraps of that brush, a wrap of black marabou, and like some like natural Amherst, and those things will slay.
Hell yeah. No, I love them. I wasn't like against them ever. I just never picked any up. And then once I finally did, I was like, holy shit. Yeah.
Either did I. And I'll say sometimes I've gone through phases. Sometimes I do love them, because I'll say sometimes the only reason I don't love them is because of how, I'll say, like, there's the legs or stuff are done in them. And as I can't wrap another quarter of a wrap, but I need to wrap a quarter of a wrap to get those other legs. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the placement of it, which then you go to the things. Well, like, now I need to make my own brushes. So
yeah, that looks fun too. Like, I've watched the process. I'm like, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that it's fun. And so I'll say, if I get to the point where I need another little.
Well, you're dyeing your own marabou, so it's just a matter of time. Like,
right?
You'll get there. Yeah.
The woolly bugger that seems to get the sea wren cutthroats, I mean, those are tied with my own chicken feathers. So
that's cool.
I'm raising birds and dyeing feathers.
Yeah, that's cool. So how do people get your flies then? Are you just selling them through Instagram? Is there a different route?
Right now, I don't have a website. I have an Etsy shop, which does not have very much in it right now, just because I've been so busy other places. They're online with House of Fly Project. And I know there's a few patterns on there, and there's about 24 more flies getting shipped out to them tomorrow, and more are coming. So I would say right now, if there's flies that people would really want, Instagram is probably the best way to order if they don't see what they want on Etsy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you're
for custom orders. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Way cool.
And that's typically custom stuff is what I do the most of.
Man, it feels so cool when you get a custom order. Like, I haven't done one of those in a long since I really started tying my own stuff. I'm not really ordering big custom orders from anybody lately. But when I've got my first one from Jonathan Farmer, like, I was so pumped. I was communicating with them what I wanted, and they turned out like exactly what I wanted, and they're so sweet.
Yeah, great. It is fun, and it's I'll say, as an artist, because I know Jonathan, I've talked with him a lot, and he's an exceptional tyer, and had conversations with him about the artist portion of it. And it really is fun to, when somebody, I'll say, says, like, I had an order where they were just like, I want a bunch of one-offs, like, just like, I want peach, cool. I want orange, I want intruders, but I just make me a bunch of one-offs. And it's like, okay, it's just design.
Creative freedom.
And it's fun then to send those off. And Yeah, I don't know if you realize, but going back to all the things, there being so many different scenarios and ways to buy flies and ways in which they're produced. Like, I'm sure when you got those flies from Jonathan, you open those and just the way they feel in your hand.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
feels,
It was
it's like,
Christmas morning, yeah.
I mean, no offense, like I worked in a fly shop, like I open those fly drawers and I'm like, you should come touch them. Like my flies deserve their own dollhouse.
Yeah.
They're pretty birds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was very
I
stoked.
mean, there is a difference. You can tell, like when you get some of these tires, I'll say like myself or Jonathan, that we really, care about not just, I'll say the materials that we're bringing in and we're tying in general, but then within how we are selecting each feather for that particular fly. It's really handpicked.
Did you pre-order his book by chance?
I haven't. No, I've been so, like I said, busy in this, in just my own world, but I just saw that he had that out. And so I need to reach out to him because that is super, super exciting for him. I know he's been a long time tie-in and a lot longer than I have. So
yeah, I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to be flipping through that puppy. I
there's something. I mean, I love looking at flies online and stuff, but to me, maybe it was because I'm a child of the '80s. Like, there's something about having that physical book in your hands. Like, I still would prefer to tie flies from a book.
From a book, yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. And from what I understand, the book's going to have all kinds of stories about the fly and how to fish it and like all that other extra stuff that you're not going to get from just watching a tie-in video or something.
Right.
So,
which is cool because that's what people want. They want to know. Everybody wants the secret pill. So Jonathan gave it to them in the book.
So
Jonathan wins.
So I always ask guests on my show another non-fishing question, but it's if you've ever had a paranormal or supernatural experience. And I can already kind of tell that you're a little tuned into this kind of thing if you're paying attention to the synchronicities the same way I do. But I'm curious if you had any, if you're open to sharing that stuff.
It's funny because like I hear that, like you hear the word paranormal, and to me that like I think of like The Exorcist, and I think of like whatever Dateline, something that I watched when I was babysitting back before we had on-demand TV, and you had to watch whatever was on TV at 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
So in like that kind of realm or regard, I would say no. But I have, like, if you believe in like energy and spirits, and like I believe that we exist, our energy, however you want to look at it, exists. Like we're here, we've got like this physical form, but I'll say who we are, the essence of who we are, the energy that fills this physical body, it has always existed, will always exist, whether or not you want to say that takes different shapes or forms. Anyways, my way of going with that is, yes, I've seen dead people.
Yeah. I mean, well,
I've had, my father died when I was 2.5, and I'm an only child. I've been a very, I'll say, spiritual and energy aware, if that's a good term for it, oriented person, like my whole life. And as a young child, I remember thinking I was having an experience with somebody who had passed or their energy or whatever. But then I'll say growing up and being a kid, being like, you were imagining that. Flash forward to being a mother. I think I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and I was in a place, I'll say in a very quiet, and I would say, yeah, I had an experience where I saw something and I had somebody else corroborate it and back it up that I did not ask for. Like someone came by and said, like, you kind of like, you saw that, right?
Oh, wow. And you're like,
and I was like,
you did?
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So
what was it? What did you guys see? What is it?
I saw a woman.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And this is going to sound really weird, like, because I don't know exactly who she was, but I want to say she was like of Tongan ancestry.
Oh, weird.
Like, yeah.
Man, you just reminded me of this story my brother has. I have 5 brothers and sisters, right? And we lived out kind of in the sticks near Placerville, California, growing up.
Oh, okay. I know Placerville.
Yeah. And there was a time where he, middle of the day, looked back into my parents' bedroom, which was behind our living room, and like it had like closet type doors, like big opening, pull open doors, and he swears to God that he saw a whole scene of people in there from a different time period. And he was 10 or 12 years old or something like that, and that there was this 1800s type people like in another dimension or something, like
I'm totally getting
bleeding
goosebumps.
through. Yeah.
Well, because it probably, well, I mean, we could really, here's another podcast, like, because time really doesn't exist, right? Like it doesn't. Like my favorite movie is probably, what is it? Inception? Is that the one with
I've never watched it, but I know what it's about.
Matthew McConaughey? Oh, you got to watch that one, because it's like, oh yeah, like that was the movie that I'll say put words or some kind of something to my thoughts on time and how it exists and doesn't exist. Like it's all like, if you want to get like religious, they say it's one eternal round religiously. And like, but I think that is what time is. Like everything is happening over and over again. Like you're always 1 year old, you're always 7, you're always in the 1800s. Of course, they saw the portal into that. Yeah. We're always here. We just,
yeah. Well, I don't know if you're into UFOs, but like I read about UFOs a lot. I've been very interested for years, and that's an idea you're hearing more in some kind of unique circles about that specific notion of time and how this is it's wouldn't say not non-linear, you know what I mean?
Right. I'll say like I don't like saying time doesn't exist, because it does, but it doesn't exist as we look at it as
not a straight line. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't, and things don't happen in a straight line. They're layered. I'll say they're layered. And yeah, that's why I love that movie Inception, because it puts it so beautifully. Like they're on this planet where it's like 1 minute is like 9 years on Earth.
Yeah.
And he comes back, and like his daughter, like he's still like in his 40s, and his daughter's like 113 or something.
That's another UFO thing, right? The missing time. Like people are always like, oh yeah, I was gone for months, and they're like, no, you're gone for 3 minutes or whatever, right? Like that's always something wild like that. And I have a feeling we probably line up pretty well in this stuff. And if you're interested in, I don't know how deep you've gone down in that idea of your consciousness surviving bodily death, but that's like it's something that I really kind of nerded out on for a period of time recently. And this dude who's pretty well known in the UFO world, Robert Bigelow, has a foundation studying that basically, and he held a $1 million contest. He's like the guy who created, like, I want to say Choice Hotels, one of those hotel brands.
Oh, okay.
But he's used all that money for paranormal research, pretty much. Like all the millions he's made on his hotel chain, he's using all this weird shit, which I love, right? And
oh my gosh.
And so he put out this contest for his thing that he was collecting essays for proof that your consciousness survives bodily death, right? And there was a winner of the essay contest, and I read that essay, read a couple other things, a couple other essays that were up there, like highly ranked or whatever. And if you're interested, I'll send you a link, because it's some wild
Please do.
stuff.
I'd be really curious, because I absolutely believe that, just from, I mean, if you've ever been with somebody who's had like a near-death experience.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that, at least that doesn't remember it. I that has experienced that enough to tell me.
Yeah, I've had, the one experience I had was when I was years ago, when my older kids were young. We were living in our old house, and our neighbors had a nephew who was an accident, burned severely bad, and was airlifted. And he died during that airlift, but they were able to resuscitate him. And the stories that kid told, and from knowing who that child, because it was a cousin, the neighbors, like we were super close with the neighbors. So I mean, it was a kid that I had known. Like, this kid isn't making story. Like, there's no way he did. It's not like he came from like a family where there is going to be like tell all these wild stories. Like they're going to, and I really like, I think sometimes children say the most profound things.
Right. I was always waiting for my kids to say something super weird. I never got them, but I was just waiting.
I'll say some of the most profound things that I have heard throughout all the course of my years have usually come from either children or from, I'll say, sources or people that you would not deem as like super successful, intelligent, like educated, like kind of like the small and simple things, right, are sometimes most profound.
Yeah, the purity of childhood, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
But like, I thought you meant like something like they were talking about a past life, like that's or that there's ghosts.
No. But this kid, he was talking about like being able to watch himself. He was able to accurately describe exactly what the doctors and nurses were doing to him medically.
While he was out of body.
While he was dead.
Yeah. Wow.
He was watching them on his body. So when he came back, he was able to tell them exactly like, you intubated me, you did this, you did that. Like,
have you seen the Netflix doc Surviving Death?
No.
Okay, it's a book. It was a great book, and they turned it into like an episodic thing. You're gonna
that
cry.
wasn't the one that was written by hospice nurses, was it?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so. But it's even the first episode, especially because it touches on stories like that, people experiencing life after death, things like, I don't want to give any away because I think you're gonna love it. You're gonna cry. It's gonna
good.
It's brutal, but it's some of the most compelling evidence of this type of thing that I've ever heard. Yeah.
No, I'm a firm believer that there is. I mean, just from like experiences I've had, from experiences others have had, I think there's too much energy in our energy for it to be finite.
Oh, I think life is way weirder than
any
of us know, for sure.
I mean, if you just look at how life I understand it's not, and maybe this is where we have to go with it, it's not the same exactly. Like, you look at how trees die and turn out, all these things, these cycles, like, even though like it's the energy, it changes, it doesn't end. Like, it just takes on different form, different speed, different vibrate, however you want to describe it. I think.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm a firm believer, whether you want to say it was creation or Big Bang, whatever it was, like, there had to have been something to start with. Even in like people that like say creation like theory, like, I'll work with creation theory, but I'm working within that, say, like the higher power or God is a chemist working with math and physics, because we know math and physics are the language of the universe, right? To somehow chemically create or something, the nebulas into organized matter, which is rock and tree and dirt and earth, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. I think it's whatever it is. Because you look out in the universe, there's matter that's unorganized, and there's matter in planets and stuff that's organized. And you can't have organization and disorganization exist in the same. I mean, we could go.
No, you're speaking my language, lady.
It's cool to look at those things and to be able to just, I'll say, and that's going, bringing it back to fly fishing. Like, you stand in a river and you go. For me, that's the one place where where my mind can be, where it's like I can just focus on what I want to, like the work, the whatever, like where I'm at the moment, where I'm there. Like, I'm not.
This makes sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I'll say yes to paranormal experiences, and I think our energy exists. Just it exists. You know.
I'm gonna send you some links. You'll have fun reading.
Have you seen that movie called Soul?
I don't think so. No. Ever since I had kids, I rarely watch a movie.
It's a kids movie. That's
Oh,
I
yeah?
can't remember
Okay.
if it's Disney or Pixar. That's why I'm like, watch it with your kids.
Okay.
How old are your kids?
They're 9 and 6.
Okay, they will love it because it's a guy that he comes back, like he dies, he falls in a manhole, and he comes back as the cat
Oh wow. Okay.
by accident. And it's really interesting because we talk about the energy going on like after this existence.
Oh yeah.
But that movie talks about where the energy came from before you got here.
Cool. Yeah.
And where personality comes from. Like, have you ever wondered, like, I've got 5 kids, they're all from the same DNA, and they are like, but not only are they different just from where they've grown and evolved and become, those children were different from the moment they took their first breath.
Oh, my kids were different in the belly. Yeah. You know, yeah. I could tell.
I want to write.
They weren't even in my belly, and I could tell.
Right? Yeah. I want to write a book or have something somewhere where you plug in your kid's personality and their birth story, and you realize that like how their birth story, whether it's coming up to the birth or the actual labor and delivery or whatever, like, because each one of my kids is fought. Like my water broke 6:30 a.m. on my due date with my first. He is timely, he is responsible, and after 36 hours of labor I had to have a C-section, and that's like him. He can only take so much, and then he has to be delicately removed from it.
Man. I haven't investigated that deep on mine yet, but now you're gonna make me. So. Right on, Amanda.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I had a blast talking with you, and we were all over the place, which I love too. That's kind of my goal with these interviews. I want to touch on all kinds of different stuff. So thank you.
Good.
You know?
Well, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's fun to talk about fishing and flies. And I'll say for me, in fishing and fly tying is just a medium for human connection, and that's why we're all here. And so,
hell yeah.
If it can.
I'd love to connect with you again when you move out over to the Grand Ron and start talking about where you're fishing out there.
Yes, definitely. Once I get kind of I'll say my sea legs,
Yeah.
my Lewiston sea legs. And yeah, that would be great. It would be super fun to do an update and just, talk about because that's a whole nother beast, that steelhead fishery.
If you're ever in my neck of the woods, holler at me.
Absolutely. I definitely will. So thank you so much. And send me the links to all those things. I'm totally intrigued and want to go down that rabbit hole.
I'll text you. Thanks again to Amanda for being my guest. I had a great time finally getting to know the girl who ties flies after following her online for so long. Our conversation kind of jumped all over the place too, which I like. We seem to have sort of similar outlooks on things, and she pays attention to synchronicities, which I feel is a valuable trait to have. We just had a little synchro while planning the release of this episode, as a matter of fact. I had originally had her scheduled to be episode 34, but bumped her up to episode 32, which come to find out happens to be her favorite number, and just confirms the choice I made to move it up in the schedule. Whatever that will end up meaning in the long run is anybody's guess, but I like it in the moment. I really do feel like synchronicities are the universe or God or source or whatever you want to call it telling you that you're on the right track. I encourage you to follow them when you notice them and invite the subtle influence to do its thing. Maybe something good will come of it. Maybe nothing will. I used to talk a little bit about the occult significance of the episode number on early episodes of this show. And since Amanda was stoked to hear she was going to be featured on episode 32, I figured I would dive in and see what the internet could teach me about it. I think of Sandy Koufax as soon as I see that number, but that isn't the subject we're looking for this internet search.
What if I told you I could take you down a rabbit hole that could completely shatter your reality?
The first thing I found, and I'm going to guess is at least part of the reason Amanda likes the number 32, it symbolizes creativity, balance, and harmony. We all need a little bit of those things, so right on. That isn't weird enough for me though. In fact, there isn't anything dark or occult about that number from what I'm reading. It's a positive thing all around. People say if you see that number, it means that you're on the right track. just like I was talking about synchronicities earlier. So is that a synchro within a synchro? I thought for a minute that the Skull and Bones Secret Society / elite Ivy League frat used the number 32 on their skull logo, but I was wrong. They used the number 322. What does that stand for? They try to say that it stands for the year 322 BCE of the death of the Greek orator Demosthenes, which was a turning point in the transformation of ancient Athens from a democracy to a plutocracy. But that is just the top-level explanation. Once you dig into that group, you realize that along with all the big pop stars, rappers, and actors, they're into ritual and Solomonic magic and other occult practices. I believe it's a call-out or mockery of the Bible verse Genesis 3:22. It's a fairly well-known verse that includes this passage. The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. They see the serpent from the Garden of Eden as the divine, freeing them from the control of God and religion, and hold that knowledge over us feeble eaters and peasants. If you ask me, and you probably aren't because this is a one-way conversation, all these people think that they're alchemists, living out daily rituals for selfish gains, and again, these must work to some extent because the practice has endured for generations. Yikes, I really got off topic there, and I'm just trying to finish the episode I had so much fun making with my new pal Amanda. Look, I am constantly on the prowl for knowledge, you guys. However weird whatever I'm reading online and calling it knowledge might be. I felt like I soaked in some knowledge from chatting with Amanda. The older I get, the more I question my own purpose behind things. Is that part of getting older? I'm always asking myself why I'm about to do what I'm doing, or why I did something or said something. I want my purpose to be true. If it isn't, then I'm not doing things right. As I read yet another article about giants, I ask myself why I'm so interested in the topic and if there's any benefit to absorbing this knowledge that I've found. I think it's from my dad hating our television growing up and always letting us kids know that the things we were watching had zero value. That sunk in, and I don't like seeing the new depths of zero value entertainment that is available on demand to my kids now. Anyways, I justify my often ridiculous internet conspiracy research as my never-ending independent education to learn who really pulls the strings. Man, who is really in charge? Should I care? Should you care? We know they're evil. Can we do anything about it? I have been told on numerous occasions that I'm part of the problem for not being a voter. I think that you're part of the problem if you aren't reading about giants and how the Rockefellers built a house on Jekyll Island on top of an Indian burial ground and then crafted up the Federal Reserve there, or if you believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in prison. That's how I'm ending this one, folks. Go fish the Skykomish. Twist up a Skykomish sunrise. Follow Amanda on Instagram. Order some sweet custom flies from her. Find your own balance and harmony and just be cool, alright? I'll end the show with a few things that I like and feel like sharing with you. Thanks for listening, everybody. The first recommendation for today is a conspiracy podcast that I like. I listen to a handful of these, obviously, and occult symbolism in pop culture hosted by Isaac Weishaupt is always quality. It's well researched and put together in a digestible way, whether you're a loon that has read about this stuff for years or just dipping your toes in. The podcast provides unbiased opinions and discussions on symbolism theories within pop culture, music, film, and more. One of my favorite episodes was called Kobe Bryant's Occult Kids Books, which doesn't have an episode number, but was released on February 1st, 2020 if you're interested in checking it out. If you're a big Twin Peaks fan, you'll probably like this show even more, as the host has done a deep dive on that series. The next one is a music documentary on Scott Walker, who was once a teen icon in the 60s avant-garde pop group The Walker Brothers. It's called 30th Century Man, and you can find it on Netflix. Some good pals of mine up in Seattle turned me on to Scott and the Walker Brothers, first through the movie Bronson, starring Tom Hardy, about a prisoner named Michael Peterson who is considered Britain's most violent criminal. Anyways, the film starts with a jaw-droppingly violent fight scene between a greased-up nude Tom Hardy and a large group of prison guards, all set to the sounds of a Scott Walker track called The Electrician. It blew my mind, because the song was so good and worked so well with this insane movie scene, and because I had somehow never heard of Scott Walker until that point. If you're in that boat, watch Bronson. See if that scene makes you want to listen to Scott Walker and then watch a weird documentary on a weird, talented dude.
Smoking is for smelly old idiots. Do you want to be a smelly old idiot? No, of course not. You want to be young and hip and handsome and wet and addicted. And the best way to accomplish these goals is to quit smoking and start lubing. Philip Morris International is proud to present their new line of nicotine-based personal lubricants. These high-quality, silicone-based adult lubricants are the perfect antidote to your unyielding nicotine addiction. What's that? You're not addicted to nicotine because you never smoked cigarettes or cigars? Well, there's no better time to become addicted to a harmful substance than the present. Don't save for tomorrow what can be accomplished today. So go out and get yourself a tube of Philip Morris International's nicotine-laced adult sensual lubricant. Each tube is absolutely packed with the chemicals your brain craves, but rather than getting said chemicals into your blood-brain barrier via inhaling harmful smokes or vapors, you can now simply grab a handful of this lubricant and rub it all over your rock-hard penis. Rub it all over your penis and testicles. Or if you're like me, you can rub it on your stupid little butt. I smear this slippery, luxurious lube all over my hungry dumper, and it satisfies my nicotine addiction while also satisfying my need for rectal stimulation. I jam all sorts of stuff up my butt with the help of Philip Morris International's nicotine-flavored anal cream-style lubricant jelly. You won't believe how much stuff I can fit up inside of my anal cavity thanks to this lube. I've got stuff up there right now, but I'll never tell you what it is. That's my little secret. Actually, that's my big secret, because this thing is huge. Over the years, I've trained my sphincter to really relax and allow items with quite large circumferences. Is that a word? Would it be circumferenci? I don't know. All I know is that my pooper can gape real good, and I can stick huge things in there, and I love the way it feels. Get yourself a tube of stimulating adult-style, tobacco-flavored, nicotine-infused, tar-colored, personal masturbation, silicone-based, edible, drinkable lube today. You won't regret it. Smear it all over your little peeper and feel the intense tingling rush as the nicotine enters your penis, or pump the goop directly into your butt for an even more powerful experience. Philip Morris International, a name you can trust and a lube that will make you bust. Please note that this is not a real advertisement, and the company, brand, entity, or product mentioned in the preceding ad in no way endorses, agrees with, or knows about this podcast.